Hey students, welcome to the last practice for your checkpoint 4 for the Great Gatsby. For this practice, you are going to do a character analysis. So you'll pick one of the characters we have pictured here, either Jay Gatsby, Myrtle Wilson, Nick Carraway, Daisy Buchanan, George Wilson, Tom Buchanan, Jordan Baker, or Meyer Wolfsheim. So decide which character you would like to focus on. And then you'll do the following. So you'll select one of the characters, and then you'll complete a character analysis that includes an image, quotes, color hypothesis, and full structure paragraph. And we'll look at the next slide for an example. And this says that you can use slide 4 for a template, but I've also included a template actually in your document to make it even easier for you. And we'll take a look at that at the end. So here is the directions. So you have a place to include an image of the character, 3 locations for the quotes and your in-text citations, just with the chapter you took it from. And then it says, utilizing all 3 of your recorded quotes, complete an analytical paragraph that tracks how your character changes through the novel. Based upon this character development, conclude how the reader should perceive this character. So when you pick your quotes, you're going to want to pick them from throughout the book, otherwise it won't help show their development. So your first quote might come from chapters 1 through 4, your second quote might come from chapters like 5 and 6, and your last quote might come from chapters 7, 8, 9. And that way you can get a good kind of variance of how the characters behaved. And again, this can be a quote said by your character. However, also if you think you have a really good quote about a quote said about your character, you could also do that. And then last but not least, focus on your character's American dream. All characters in the novel want something desperately. It's definitely true. What are your character's surface level wants? What is it that they actually want deeper down? How does this tie to their American dream? And lastly, does Fitzgerald portray their American dream as attainable or impossible? And so when we look at this next slide, I have a student sample that was completed for Jordan Baker. Now, if you wanted to do yours on Jordan Baker, you absolutely can. You'll just need to pick different quotes, okay? So we have the student, they picked 3 quotes, one from page 20, one from page 58, and one from page 62. I do think that they could have done a better job spacing their quotes a little more. Like, I think there's some quotes from the very end of the novel they could have picked that would have been better and given them a better development of Jordan's character. But I still really like the paragraph that they wrote, and so I use this one as an example. So when you write your paragraph, you're going to want to make sure you have your topic sentence, 1, 2, 3 pieces of evidence that are your quotes here, and then your explanation of that evidence. So elaboration 1, elaboration 2, elaboration 3, and then your conclusion. So the topic sentence says, in The Great Gatsby, Jordan is intimidating, witty, and careless. And so in the topic sentence, it indicates what the writer is going to prove about Jordan. They're going to prove these 3 things through these 3 quotes. Makes sense. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So in evidence 1, it says, for example, when Nick first meets her, she completely ignores him. He even feels like apologizing to her, even though she is the one being rude. And that's on page 20. So the student does something really interesting. They have the quote here. If she saw me out of the corner of her eye, she gave no hint of it. Indeed, I was almost surprised into murmuring an apology for having disturbed her by coming in, page 20. Instead of using the quote, the student paraphrases the quote and explains it in their own words so that they can emphasize what it is they feel is important about the quote. And I really liked that. I liked the fact that instead of just like putting the quote in there, they emphasized it in their own words to like prove what they wanted to prove, that she's being rude, yet Nick feels like apologizing. And then they go in to elaborate and explain what does this show about her character. So they say this shows how her I don't care attitude gives her control over other people. So this goes into the intimidating aspect. So notice they say they're going to prove Jordan's intimidating. They include evidence proving that, and then they explain how this shows that she's intimidating. Really well done. Now let's move on to evidence 2. It says, however, the fact that she doesn't care also makes her a dangerous person, such as when she drives carelessly and insists that other drivers, there's some typos in here, that's okay, other drivers will keep out of her way. And so they miss their in-text citation. That's all right. Their in-text citation's over here. They say, they'll keep out of my way, she insisted. It takes two to make an accident, 58. And so here they pull a little quote out of here, keep out of her way. So they have what we call a breakout quote. But again, we see that they paraphrase some of it in order to emphasize what it is that is really important about it. And so I want you to do the same thing. Make sure that you clarify what it is that's important about the quote. And then elaborate. This quote foreshadows that if she meets someone just as careless as her in the future, she may hurt them accidentally. And so they explain what this shows about her character, and that goes to the careless. We actually have a small error here where this word careless should be second because it's the second one that they prove. And so no writer's perfect. We're seeing some little errors in this student example, but I still think it's a really good example. And so then we go to evidence 3, and it says, yet, even with this negative characteristic of her being careless, we still like Jordan because she is funny. And I like large parties, they're so intimate. At small parties, there isn't any privacy. And so they bring in this full quote right here because they want the whole thing. But they explain why this quote is important, because it shows that Jordan has a sense of humor, because this is a pretty ironic thing to say, which is what they explain next. Her quote here is purposely ironic because we expect large parties to not feel intimate. However, Jordan points out an unexpected and true reality about how people actually have more privacy in crowded places because no one's trying to listen into your conversation. And so here they prove that she's also witty, which should be the last thing on their list. And so this student writer had a really good pacing where they kind of have their evidence where they point out what's important about the quotes, and they do that in 3 different ways. This way is a full paraphrase. This way uses a small breakout quote with paraphrasing, and then this one uses paraphrasing with a full quote. So I really liked the variety of ways that they integrated their evidence. And then for each piece of evidence, they explain what it proves about Jordan's character, and that for the most part matches their topic sentence, though it's a little out of order. Then in the wrap-up it says, therefore, Jordan is a character that we have mixed feelings about, where we don't know if she's a character that we should like or dislike. And so they draw a conclusion that's a very logical conclusion from what they've proven up here. And then for their very last part about Jordan's American dream, they say Jordan's American dream isn't anything, which is very interesting. Unlike all of the other characters who clearly want something, she just seems to lazily make her way through every day. She lives, I think they should say, she lives with friends and she dates whoever is around. This is why I think she is linked to the color gray. This is the color of her eyes. This shows that while she seems like a good person, she actually cares about nothing and no one. Lastly, since she doesn't have an American dream, there is nothing for her to really attain. I think the student does a really good job here. They have a typo, but you know what? When the ideas are this good, we don't care about typos, and these ideas are really good. So they point out the fact that she's connected with the color gray, pointing out that her eyes are that color, and she links that to the fact that Jordan's super lazy, and the student kind of proves that she's lazy by the fact that like she just lives with whoever will let her live with them and dates whoever's near her. She doesn't really seem to care about anything, and therefore they quite interestingly point out this idea that maybe she doesn't have an American dream. Maybe she's the only character who doesn't. So I thought this student did a really good job. And this is an example of kind of what you should do for your own character. And as I said, I have a template already built in here. You can put your image here, you can put your quotes here, you can put your paragraph here, and you put your kind of ideas about what their American dream is in this bottom one. And then you're done. All right, let me know if you have any questions about this practice. I'm really excited to see what ideas you come up about your character. All right, bye.